Okay, Mark. Well, I mentioned the grade that the 49ers got for so far, at least in free agency, is at a B plus from Pro Football Focus. The rest of the NFC West, however, as maybe some have kind of paid attention to what's been going on specifically in Los Angeles, not as much in Arizona, and Seattle has also made some under the radar moves as well. The Seahawks also received a B plus grade. The Arizona Cardinals and the Los Angeles Rams both received C minus grades. And I know that you were kind of keeping an eye on what the Rams were going to be doing, and you yourself have not been too high on the Rams, even in the middle of this season, sort of foresaw the downfall of Los Angeles, so to speak. But Mark, I'll just give you the floor. I mean, what have you seen from the rest of the NFC West when it comes to free agency?
Honestly, the team that's probably had the second best offseason so far, probably the Seahawks. I think the Niners have had the best offseason. They've certainly made the biggest move, in at least the biggest plus move for this coming season in Javon Hargrave. Maybe the second biggest move that surprised more people was the Rams trading Jalen Ramsey away, an elite corner. I know he's had his issues here and there, but a very good football player. And it seemed to me they're waving the white flag on the season already. I know they have a lot of talent, and almost, just being healthy kind of acts as some free agency additions. They would assume that Matthew Stafford is going to be back, that Aaron Donald is going to be back, and a number of guys on their offensive line are going to be back and healthy and ready to play. So those kind of act like free agency additions, Evan. But they're in such a terrible position financially, draft pick wise, that they felt, I think, forced into making that trade, trading away Jalen Ramsey, getting some young assets, getting some draft assets, and getting some cap relief back in return. And it seems to me like they're on the opposite side of the 49ers right now. We just talked about how it feels like the 49ers are going all in, trying to win now. The Rams are on the downturn of that approach. They went all in, they got a Super Bowl, and now they're dealing with the repercussions of that. They have a ton of money tied up to old, injured stars who they hope are healthy for this season, but not sure. And they have no draft picks to lean on. So what do? You try to ship out one of your more valuable pieces in Jalen Ramsey, hope you find a desperate team that really needs a corner, and you hope you get a bunch of good draft picks that you hit on, and it turns into relief for your aging old team. But it seems like in the short term, Evan, I don't know how you feel, but to me, it feels like they're giving up on a chance at trying to win, at least, go deep in the playoffs. They could still be competitive, but it seems to me like they're okay with not having much of a chance at trying to win a championship this season based on their moves in the offseason.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I think I'll take it a step further. Look, the Rams do not have a draft pick this year until the 5th round, and that is completely their fault. But even with Aaron Donald, even with Matt Stafford, I think the Rams are setting up to go from feasting to famine and being okay with it. Like, I think they are trying to, at least it looks like to me, I think they're trying to tank heading into next season. Because when do the Rams start getting first round picks? In 2024. They have all their picks coming in next year, all their picks in 2025, all their picks in 2026. So I think the Rams are trying to set up themselves to maybe be competitive, maybe fall into, a 9-win season, maybe sneak into the playoffs here and there, but they're trying to get ready so that when they have draft picks, I believe that they can use them properly, and perhaps even heading into next season, if things don't go well, if Aaron Donald maybe tapers off a little bit, if all those injury-ridden stars that they're paying big dollars to, like you mentioned, continue to get injured, that they can set themselves up for immediate tank mode, kind of like they did this year. They don't get to reap the benefits of it this year, but starting next season, they will. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Les Snead along with Sean McVay and the rest of those people down south in Los Angeles set themselves up that way. I think the Seattle Seahawks, like you mentioned, are interesting because they didn't really make any big signing outside of Geno Smith. I know they signed a couple of defensive linemen who Jermont Jones and Jerron Reed were the two signings there that they beefed up, and it'll help a team that really struggled at the defensive line last season. But like they let Rashad Penny go, they let Travis Homer go. Pete Carroll seems to churn out running backs, and Kenneth Walker looks to be a guy that'll be there in the future. But I'm with you that the Rams, I don't know what they're doing, and maybe they're trying to get too smart. But Seattle would be the other team that I would say had a plus free agency.
Yeah, so, I mean, they certainly didn't get worse. There was positive moves, but then, of course, as you mentioned, they did lose out on a few guys. I'm still a little worried. At least I would be worried if I'm a Seahawk fan about that offensive line. I know that they have a couple of youngsters who played really well as rookies, and we talked about them all season long, or at least the weeks leading up to the Niners Seahawks games, how impressive they are. But they're still relatively young and inexperienced, and overall not great on the offensive line. We'll see how they address that. And then, the elephant in the room is the Arizona Cardinals offseason. And to me, that's just, they're totally irrelevant at this point. They don't even deserve much of a mention because they're not going to have Kyler Murray this entire season. And even if they did, they're not going to be very good. They are a dumpster fire. One of the worst run franchises over the last couple of years in the NFL. That's how bad they have been. For a team that looked like they had a really high ceiling just a couple of years ago, it has taken a gigantic downturn, in the front office all the way down onto the field. So certainly they're not in the running for best NFC West offseason. It's certainly, in my opinion, between the Niners and the Seahawks. And because the Niners, got the big splash in Javon Hargrave, they deserve that top spot to me. But I'm with you. The Seahawks, I'm interested in keeping an eye on them throughout the rest of the offseason because they're a team who, as we talked about a lot last season, very young, but very talented, and they already overachieved. If those youngsters, Evan, continue to improve, how do they look? Can Geno Smith keep it up for another year? Can those rookies who received, first team or all rookie offensive AP rookie of the year and defensive rookie of the year votes, those guys continue progressing, you could be looking at a really, really good team with a lot of their best players on rookie deals. Then what do they do alongside those guys? I'm interested in seeing how that all works. I don't think they're in the Niners area just yet in terms of talent on the roster. Not many teams are, but I think they're the closest, at least in being able to catch the 49ers in a couple of seasons.
Yeah, and look, I think it was Caesars Sportsbook, the Niners are minus 170 to win the division. Those odds are honestly kind of low to me. I might just throw whatever money I would have lost on Gonzaga last weekend on the Niners to win the division.
That's a wild number because you literally have no clue who the Niners quarterback is. Starting quarterback week 1. And they're still
I know, and I still feel
170.
confident that they're going to win the division.
I'm with you.
Yeah, no, I mean, the number's based completely on the roster. It's interesting. It's fascinating, honestly, because right now in the NFC West, Geno Smith is the best quarterback currently that is penciled in as a starter. And the 49ers still have a far superior roster. I will say this for the Seahawks. I think it's interesting that Pete Carroll seems to, I don't know if it's just him like being able to kind of connect with younger players or get them to buy in more than sort of those older vets, but there's nowhere near as much talent as obviously the early 2010 Seattle Seahawks teams that he had. But a common theme I feel like is that whenever he is able to get a core of young guys, and especially like a season like last year, I think played a big role in potentially what is to come. I would be a little bit afraid of them. I know the Niners handled them twice in the regular season, and of course once in the postseason last year. But to me, that's something that a Pete Carroll team would simply use as fuel as opposed to just being the team to kind of get beat and then roll over the ensuing year. So we'll see. And of course, the 49ers, even when the Seahawks have been bad, have struggled in Seattle. I mean, last year was the first time they beat them up in Seattle, and it was like 11 tries or something like that. So yeah, I'm definitely going to keep my eye on what they're doing.
Yeah, no, I mean, they have picks in this draft as well because they have the Broncos' first round pick from the Russell Wilson trade, so they could very well be in the market to go out and get a young quarterback. They just re-signed Geno Smith, but if someone falls that they like, they could be drafting their quarterback of the future, and if they hit on that, the entire feeling of this division changes. We probably won't see that quarterback if they do pick one this season, because, they are locked in with Geno Smith for at least another year or two, you would think. But they could start developing a young quarterback. And if they decide not to go quarterback, there's a lot of really talented guys, of course, on both sides of the ball in the first round. And they hit on that, this division could change a little bit. So, I mean, that move they made last offseason, trading away Russell Wilson and getting the boatload of picks they got back, looks greater by the day. And now it's up to them to take advantage of the first of those first round picks that they got back. And who knows, it could be one of the main reasons why maybe they're able to be competitive with the 49ers in the coming years.
Yeah, I think there's especially at the top of the draft, there's a lot of good defensive linemen. Wouldn't be surprised to see them go there. Also, it's just so funny. Like you mentioned, it's all right. So you trade away your starting quarterback. You get better at the quarterback position by far. You re-sign said quarterback for $15 to $20 million less per year than what you were paying your previous veteran, now potentially washed quarterback. And on top of that, you get multiple first-round picks and a top prime spot in this year's draft. So, yeah, even though they got a B+ in free agency so far, they got an A+ for their offseason last year, as far as I'm concerned.